Nintendo Company of Japan. Unless you've somehow been living under a rock since the 1990s or some other completely understandable situation, I swear I'm not diminishing your life choices, you know exactly who they are and what they sell. If you somehow don't know, here's a brief recap of their history. Nintendo Company was founded in 1889 as Nintendo Karuta and originally produced handmade Hanafuda playing cards. In the 1970s, Nintendo switched to selling video games to high success, and this spread internationally. Their consoles and games have left a mark on the world and in the memories of the gamers that played them. I propose that the reason why they were so successful was due to their business strategies and just genuinely having fun games. Unintentionally, Nintendo's success spurred research into some very interesting aspects of their games. This positive coverage is bound to have been part of the resurgence of the Nintendo Company after the failure of the Wii U in 2013, which was their worst performance in a main series console to date. In chronological order of publishing, research into Nintendo games includes research into motion control games, the Wii Fit series, and being effective in combating obesity, helping with stroke rehabilitation, and maintaining proper cardiovascular health. Pokemon fans having a specific center of the brain utilized for remembering the creatures of the series. Super Mario 64 increasing brain matter and brain activity and size, the type of brain matter used for just general processing power, in the elderly. Animal Crossing New Horizons being a success due to the coronavirus pandemic and it's serving as a connection between people when they really couldn't go anywhere, and it serves as a way for them to have control over the world around them. And the interesting dichotomy of the Zelda series mixing and breathing life through combining Western Eastern storytelling and art style. The main motif here is that Nintendo games have a varied and large potential audience. It has the possibility to bring people together from all walks of life for a central reason. Although quite a bit different from their American counterparts, which mostly had one or two young white boys playing video games, the Japanese commercial had a few different archetypes, which I will now show.
ファミリーコンピューター登場。カセットを挿入するとカラー52色の鮮やかな画像。コンピューターを相手に麻雀、五目並べ、そしてポパイ、ドンキーコング、2人で楽しめるマリオブラザーズなど10種類。ポーズボタンと切り替えスイッチで簡単にテレビ番組に変わるテレビ共存タイプ。家族揃ってファミリーコンピューター。
The first one was a first-person perspective of playing their games, with a loud 1980s and 90s style reminiscent of a jazz-designed paper cup. This was effective because the hands were ambiguous as to who they belonged to, which shows that this was their conscious decision to sell more consoles so that anyone watching could identify as the person playing the game. Here's their second type of commercial.
スーパーマリオブラザーズ2はさすがディスクで面白い。へったくそ。うかー。ゼルダの伝説もさすがディスクで面白い。へったくそ。むかーちゃっか。ムカッとくるけど。やればやるほどディスクシステム。
First off, I want to apologize for being very loud. The second type shows that the games were a family console, and while arguing with each other, you could still tell that they were having fun playing with each other. By showing a parent, usually a father, playing with a child, either a son or a daughter, this promotes a family product, as it implies that their console comes with parent approval in the box. Now here's the third type. This commercial type is usually a group of kids playing a specific game dressed up as the main characters, sometimes in the setting of the game itself. This paints even the single-player role-playing games as a collaborative gaming experience. It also shows the extent of the world building that goes into the games. The developers try to put you into the world that they build, which was a successful strategy that they still more or less use it to this day.
Your journey to become a Pokemon champion starts here. Meet brand new Pokemon. Adventure awaits in this vast, expansive area where you can battle gigantic wild Pokemon. You can forge your path to greatness in Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, only for Nintendo Switch. Games rated E for everyone.
All these styles show the positive aspect of the escapism that Nintendo's video games can provide. The idea of escaping from day-to-day life is pleasing to many, and it can come in many forms. Some are school appropriate, like working out or playing an instrument, while others I don't feel comfortable about talking in a school setting, even as a 19-year-old man. Thankfully, Nintendo's escapism can provide many of the ones that I feel comfortable talking about in a school setting. This is due to their family-friendly nature and their emphasis on acceptance of all walks of life, which they have consistently shown. However, there is a juxtaposition between the family-friendly nature that Nintendo games had and their cutthroat economic competition battles and acquisitions. The 1990s were a time of console wars. Starting out the decade, Nintendo had a 90% share of the entire video game market. Obviously, this caused an influx of companies to the new and profitable market for gaming. Their biggest competitor by far was Sega. They didn't have much success at the launch of the Sega Genesis, but that changed when they released their iconic game, Sonic the Hedgehog. Their platforming character Sonic was a response to Nintendo's Mario, which was extremely successful. This caused Nintendo to begin to worry, so the two ended up in a pricing battle between the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, and the Sega Genesis. Between 1994 and 1996, Sega then released the Sega Saturn, which boasted next-generation gameplay for cheap. This caused Nintendo to scramble and release their top-of-the-line Nintendo 64 in mid to late 1996. But that was a bit more expensive than the Saturn. For, in an economic sense, you would think that the Sega would have Nintendo beat, but in reality you'd be wrong. The Sega Saturn flopped because of how incredibly hard it was to code the games. So the number of titles available for the system and released were extremely limited compared to the Nintendo 64, which also boasted better gameplay processing and graphics. This caused Sega to quit making consoles and to just make games for other systems, and Nintendo to take a victory lap for several years, until they realized other competition like Sony and Xbox. The way they more or less dealt with this was by doubling down on their family-friendly nature, thus securing their niche in the market. This confidence allowed them to partner with / purchase companies like Retro Studios, an American subsidiary of Nintendo, which produced great titles like Metroid, the family-friendly version of id Software's Doom series, as well as Intelligent Systems, who made the Fire Emblem Battle Strategy series, both of which were extremely successful simply because they're fun and enjoyable for a lot of people. This may come as a shock to you, but just because the games are fun does not mean that Nintendo is very good at telling a cohesive story that spans franchises. The biggest story-driven games have such a mess of their timeline. They're filled with retcons for the express purpose of using new features. This spans from The Legend of Zelda, where Link can be a cartoon character, a grizzled warrior, an androgynous feral amnesiac, or a wolf. Donkey Kong, where the original Donkey Kong, known as Cranky Kong in later games, tells several stories in presumably a city after kidnapping a woman and attacking a plover, and still survived and made a family, implying he wasn't arrested or anything like that. It's a video game. I shouldn't overthink it, I know. Pokemon, where Red, the main character of the first games, barely ages over the span of about 15 years, where Mega Evolution exists out of nowhere in several parts of the world. It's being replaced with just kaiju battles in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Can we just talk about for a second about the parents in that universe and how they're just okay with kids leaving home at like 11 to 15 and literally just catching and keeping guns in their pocket and stopping organized crime rings, or just that their goal in life is to become someone who has their pets fight other pets for a living. Yeah, I don't think we have time for that. So, all right, moving on. Right, yes. Okay, so these games have plot holes, but these plot basically the games change so much with reckless abandon to spice things up and to stay relevant to compete with family-friendly mobile games. The main concept between successful games, in my opinion, is the ability to become a character in another world. To the anger of many lore lovers, this is usually done by having a main character without much of a personality. This may seem like a generalization, but some of the poster characters for Nintendo, like Mario, Kirby, Red, and Samus, were really just placeholder characters. They were only there to just be able to play a story without really much thought put into it. This is because game developers realized that it is easier for the player to fill that personality in than to write it themselves. This allows greater focus on fun gameplay and a greater level of immersion for the player, which is the essence of the escapism that Nintendo games provided for such a wide audience and why I believe they were successful.